it's already been a month. So, oh, yep. Okay, so just at a high level, I know last month I took a lot of good notes on there. We had some amazing discussion last time. So as we get our agenda pulled up here, we'll kind of outline what we want to cover today. But largely, we just want to have a continuation of some of the discussion that we had around goals. I know that Emily had sent out a survey on meeting cadence, and there were some responses. So I think she wants to talk through that a little bit. I know that we kind of go over the RBA and our purpose and all of that each time. I don't know that we've got a pretty good group of folks that continue to join every time. So I don't know that we need to probably touch on that history again. But is there anyone, I was looking in the chat there, is there anyone that's new to joining us today that needs an introduction? Okay, same characters, new month, good to hear. Okay, Emily, do you want to talk about meeting cadence and what you were thinking?
Yeah, I sure can. Thanks, Travis. So I sent out that survey a couple of weeks ago about how often maybe we thought we should meet. So the options were every couple weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. And it was kind of a split between 4 and 6 weeks. And when we kind of sat down and looked at timeframes, we thought just monthly and have it be on the same day each month. That would be easier to keep track of. So once we kind of decide and settle on a date for each month, we'll send out calendar invites for that too. So thank you everybody that responded so we could kind of get a pulse on where everybody's at with meeting. And then I will jump into SMART goals as well. So we have a couple of SMART goals that we've settled on. So goal 1, as you can see, is increase the number of children, adolescents, and youth or families accessing preventative services of Buffalo County Wellbeing Collaborative members from X to Y by 12/31 of 23. So it's how much we do. Goal 3 is to celebrate X number of lived experience success stories. So it can be from persons or families who receive services and not re-entered the system. And we'll be telling those to funders, community partners, and broader community by the end of this year. So I don't know if that's a typo, if it should be 22 or 23, but we'll look at that. And then we'll split into groups today to chat through that third goal, just to see kind of if we need to further decide what and define what reentering the system means. So that second goal that we had talked about initially is decrease the number of children, adolescents, and youth from re-entering the system of receiving services by the Buffalo County Wellbeing Collaborative members from X to Y by 12 of 23. So this is how we do things. But we need to define what that system actually is, because when we kind of chatted about this, not every system has a negative connotation. Some of them are positive. Some of them are systems of care. Some of them are systems of informal and formal supports. So we really need to just define and decide what system looks like for us. And it may be that we don't use that verbiage. We could pick a different word. We can look at all of that. So also there are certain systems we want people to take part of, which are preventative, but also systems we want people to not be part of. So intervention or responsive. So those more proactive access to resources would be ideal. We also need to define high level services and how people use them in crisis, or reducing barriers and making that make the services people need in crisis easier to access in the first place. We also need to factor in business language. So like, what are some high cost services? So then we'll do breakout sessions and I'll hand it back to Travis.
Yep, got to unmute again. Okay, so thank you for going over that, Emily. Yes, we had some really good discussion last time. I think that whole re-entering the system was kind of a hang up for us. So if we can get a chance to just go into some smaller groups and get a chance to talk through what that looks like a little bit, then we can come back and kind of see what we can come up with together. So who is the master of ceremonies here that can help break us out into different breakouts groups?
I can help with that, Travis.
I thought you'd be the guy.
So how many would you like to do? Since we have a smaller group, do you just want to do 2 breakouts?
Well, let's ask the group here. Since we are a smaller group, it looks like we've got about 13 attendees on. Do we want to do a breakout into smaller groups, or should we just have one larger group discussion going through this? What
I
are the
think
thoughts for?
let's just do one larger group since there's not very many people, and then we can chat through what it looks like from our perspective.
So let's do that then. Can you pull that? Sorry, will you pull the agenda back up just so we can see some of those, some of that outline there that Emily just went over? Thank you so much, Michelle. Okay, so some of the notes that I took last time that kind of go with what are up there, as I know, you know, Dr. Schaefer had talked about prevention versus intervention services. Aaron had some good thoughts as well, had talked about systems that we want the youth, adolescents, and children to enter versus not entering. How do you capture the thriving youth? I know that Jessica had made a number of points on the negative stigma of services, so it's not always bad. So I think it's that, again, that whole re-entering the system and taking a look at different things there. So I guess how do we maybe go down to defining the system, like subpart A there? So there are certain systems that we want people to take part of. Number one, can we agree on the preventative versus intervention or responsive? Is that terminology that we feel comfortable using as we kind of progress?
I'm comfortable using that. And we had also talked about proactive access versus reactive access, which aligns really well with that intervention responsiveness versus and prevention.
Other thoughts on that terminology? Are people generally okay, or are we not capturing the essence of what we're trying to do with that, with defining it that way?
One of the things that I thought of afterwards, maybe possibly just taking the word systems out. And I thought I emailed this, but maybe I didn't. We want youth, adolescents, and children to be given opportunities to be healthy, to be and/or to become successful no matter their life circumstances. It could be worded differently, but then you don't even have the word systems in the goal.
So one of the things that I think we want to be able to do is whatever we define, we want to be able to measure so that we can really tell what's happening. So we're going to have some terms that we can measure.
So I agree. We want to have something where our definition lines up with what we're trying to, I guess, accomplish. But we also need to, in order to show an accomplishment, we need to be able to have a measurement there. Is this a PDF that we've got up right now? I think it's being thrown in the chat. What Aaron had proposed. Is that, sorry, I'm just checking that right now.
Yeah, Travis, do you want me to type on the screen some of our?
Yeah, could you do that just so that we've kind of got it in front of everyone for us to easily be able to kind of react to?
Yeah, give me a second. Unless Matt, you want to pull up your document, but I know you're taking notes or minutes.
I want to really, really scrutinize Aaron's suggestion.
I am taking minutes on my desktop. If you can, Michelle. Thank you.
So rather than use system, I'd rather use services so that we can break it down. And I think that's one of the things that we need to I mean, we have connotation for some services, being court ordered or going through the legal system. You know, we need to figure out how we quantitate those. Because I think, you know, obviously there's some endpoints that we don't want. We don't want deaths or injuries, and we don't want incarcerations, jail time. And we probably don't want our youth and adolescents even having to utilize the courts for their actions. Some of the time they get into the courts because of actions of others, be it abuse or neglect or something else, but maybe that's what we want to change that system to something that's talking about the courts and what we would call tragic outcomes. I don't know.
Aaron, can you talk further through, I like what you put out there. What would be a measurement, or how would we, do you have any thoughts as to how we would capture kind of what Dr. Schaefer is saying with being able to have kind of outcomes and measurements regarding some of the services available with the goal that you have, the wording that you have presented?
I wasn't 100% sure if it was measurable. And I'm struggling with this a little bit because I think there's a difference between services and systems. Because to me, like the foster care system, it can be a good thing, but you don't want kids going in the foster care and out of the foster care system and back in. So I'm really struggling with that. And I mean, same with like jail or probation, anything like that. To me, we want to try to prevent kids from going into those and from being like generational, like repeated generationally, I guess. So I'm really struggling because to me, services is a good thing. Like if they need mental health help, if they need like physical health, like to a doctor, that's a service that's not a bad thing. So I'm struggling with the difference, I guess, personally. So I don't know how you would measure what I'm saying, but I just felt like we got so stuck on systems and whether it was negative or positive that I was like, okay, how can we take systems out of it?
I think along those lines for the population that we work with, there's also like a risk level. Some of them are at acute risk for things to happen. Some of them it's impending, it's going to happen, but I don't know how we measure that either. Aaron, I'm with you. I love the way that you're talking about kind of opportunity and being successful no matter life circumstances, but I also don't know how to measure it. But I like it. I feel like you would almost have to follow a child from 0 to, I mean, adulthood, basically. Right. And then that reporting piece and how do we gather that information? How do we decide? So if they access services, is it positive or negative? If they're in the system, was it positive or negative? What was the outcome of the services they received? What was the outcome of their system intervention? Yeah, I think there's probably more to it than we think.
Yeah.
Hard way to measure for sure.
We
So are we
could
diving
probably,
too deep with our goal? Although we want something measurable, and I think we need to have a measurable goal to be able to show outcomes, are we digging too deep into this? Should we have maybe is there a broader goal that sits on top of the conversation that we're having that can kind of be a proxy for success and outcomes? Or do we keep going with what we're doing and get to a point where we feel comfortable? But I know, we've had a lot of discussion now, service, system, preventative intervention. And it seems like we've either got a lot of work to continue to flush this out, or maybe we need to, I don't know, not change our approach necessarily, but take a look at it differently.
I wonder if the staff shouldn't bring to the table, so you guys can see the community response piece. because we are tracking through those flex funds when children are served and when they're re-entering the system. So we do have a program going that could be expanded, that you could track. I think I'm trying to get my mind around what your overall intent is. Is your overall intent to measure all the business partners at the table, or what all the business partners do together at the table? Because if it's what you all do together at the table, then it is a measuring system that you put together with the partners.
I also feel like the direction that we've kind of taken this discussion, this goal, very closely mimics what goal 1 already is. So I don't know if we need to define things a little bit better, or maybe we only need 2 goals and we put part of this in with goal 1. I don't know. What are people's thoughts on that?
Are you saying, Emily, like to basically mirror goal 1, goal 1's increased number of, youth, children, adolescents accessing preventative services, and then to mirror that and just be like decrease the number of children, youth, and adolescents accessing, I lost the other word.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that seems, I don't want to say the easiest, but it makes the most sense to, I mean, if we're increasing it, we also have a goal to decrease. But again, I don't know how we measure this.
Yeah, but I don't know if Jessica's on, but I can just imagine what she would say, that there are, yes, do you want to decrease kids from going into maybe the foster system? Yes, or re-entering it. But if they really need that service, then how do you measure that's a negative, or that's not a negative thing?
Right.
That's not a great example, but something similar to that.
Well, that's, yeah. And also like kind of the direction we were going was with, we want youth, adolescents, children to be given opportunities to be healthy, become successful. But that's kind of what we're saying in goal 1 is by like what that looks like is they're increasing access to preventative services. I would assume with that goal, that outcome would be.
Yeah, it's kind of a twofold purpose. By getting people to the right place at the right time with the preventative services, naturally there would be you would hope, logically, there would be a decrease in some of whatever we still can't define as the services that we would hope they don't need again.
Right.
I like where you guys are headed, and earlier this week I had a conversation with some of our child abuse and neglect partners, and I think they've been a missing player at our table as well, and they really opened my eyes to the number of children they serve over again. They go back into homes for abuse and neglect, and how broken our system is. It just really had me thinking how much work we still have to do, and that they're so busy right now just serving everyone that's coming in their doors that they to ask them what prevention is, it's just beyond them right now, because they're just trying to get children safe in the next 24 hours. So I think that's what you're kind of talking about, right? Is better understanding what those partners around the table are facing with children re-entering into this this care. How do we better understand what we need to move or change in our environment and our policies, what those gaps are to make a difference for children?
Well, and I know that there are some people on here that are representing the youth, adolescent, children work group, or that they also sit on there, but do we take what we have so far and bring it back to the group and say to that work group, and they can let us know, yep, you're on the right pace, or here's what we would add to it? I mean, essentially, they're going to be doing the work that drives the outcome that we're trying to define right now.
I come back to think again that there's certain outcomes that we don't want to happen. I mean, that's what prevention is all about. And some of them are very obvious, but that's where we have to start measuring are those outcomes that we don't want for our kids and families. How do we measure those? And then we can kind of find out what our gaps are, and where we need to focus our community resources and come up with different alternatives. So I think it comes down to figuring out what that re-entering the system, to me, that is, all of us assume that that's bad outcomes, or potentially bad outcomes. And maybe we should use that term potentially or bad outcomes or something. But I think that's what we want to try to avoid. How do we avoid preventative wise child abuse? Once they enter that, then how do we make sure that we're helping them so that isn't an ongoing problem? It's the same thing with adolescents with drug and alcohol that are causing adverse outcomes. I mean, we can look at suicide attempts and the number of suicide deaths.
Okay.
I mean, these are the things that we need to start. You know, that's the way that you look at outcomes. Then you can kind of plan where we need to put our emphasis.
So,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, I'm having a hard time. The steering committee itself is supposed to be, as I understood it in this whole process, Denise, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong. It's supposed to be sort of a committee that they funnel through ideas and decide whether, where this needs to go and what needs to be done and all that kind of thing. I'm just posing, that was my thought. My question, are we trying to impose or come up with goals that are really part of the YAC job? I mean, is the steering committee supposed to be making up goals specific to a concern? Because like, what if somebody comes to the steering committee and says, we want to do something, blah, 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 I don't know what it is. That's not where, I mean, we're focusing everything on what's related to YAC. But is the steering committee in this process only for that? Or is the steering committee for all those other leaves that we don't have anybody in yet?
I think
Sorry
you're
to throw that
asking
out there, but I just think we're getting all hung up on childcare, which is huge, important and all that, but I'm not sure where, I don't know, Denise, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think I do, Kathy. I think I hear you saying, is this just for that work group or is it for the full collaborative? And I think maybe just a pause and saying we're still doing the pilot of the work group, right? So we're
Right.
still putting a bit off one small chunk. I've been thinking about the way these SMART goals are coming together, and there's really no reason those SMART goals couldn't also substitute adult versus children, adolescent, or youth, right? Or families. So I think they're interchangeable to a much broader collaboration. Once we get the language nailed, I think they work for the full collaborative and the work groups. And I think that would make it much more simpler for the steering committee to
Right.
have one or two very smart, not very smart, just smart goals that are interchangeable. But I think to get there, we have to help, because I don't think, and Aaron can jump in here, I don't think the YAC will have the time to process the SMART goal conversation to the depth of what steering committee can do.
Okay.
And then having the youth advisory or youth adult, gosh, I have too many youth and children, youth and adolescents group review that and kind of put their blessing on it and know that that's what we're all working on together. I think, like Travis is saying, I think would be helpful.
Okay, I understand. I just think we need to keep that. There's going to be more coming down the road, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that, my thoughts on this were, so the collaborative and the steering committee, that was the group that helped develop to get where we're at today. So the impact statements, the results-based accountability, the collective impact model. And so we're the connection between the collaborative and the work group where the work is done. And so I see our goal and what we're doing right now is to help create that connection through an aligned goal process. So the goals that we come up with should be, and that we work with the work groups, I think that they need to have some feedback and be okay with that, is that connects all the way back up to the model that we're trying to work through. And then to the point of the other work groups, yes, it is very youth focused right now because that's the work group that we have. My personal feeling was, as we had other work groups that started to fire up and start doing work, that we would add goals for each of those areas as well. So these wouldn't be just the 3 goals for the entire collaborative. They are very youth focused, and we would add to that as other work groups started. At least that's the way that I kind of view the world, but that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. I just thought we had to clarify that. Thanks.
So maybe going back to what Dr. Schaefer was saying, I think instead of talking about re-entering the system, because at times that's necessary, that's what I've been getting hung up on is, so we have someone that goes into the system, then there's some kind of an adverse outcome, whatever that is, and as a result of that adverse outcome, then they're needing services or going back into the system again. So maybe we back up and we focus on what those adverse outcomes are, like Dr. Schaefer is saying, which is going to cause someone to go back and receive a service that will be necessary for them. So maybe the goal could be something about capturing or reducing adverse outcomes, which cause the need for reutilization of services or system resources. And those adverse outcomes could be things like, I don't know, the suicide attempts. It could be domestic situations or something like that, where there's an issue that happens, something happens within the family unit or the school system or whatever it is, and then that leads back to them needing services again. So if we can intervene and measure those areas where there are adverse outcomes, then we should be able to capture people who obviously wouldn't need additional services if they didn't have those adverse outcomes.
I'm thinking the adverse childhood experiences, or the ACEs, might be a place to start because there's a pretty good scientific list of what those are. I'd be interested in hearing from some of those, like Krista and maybe Aaron, that work in ACEs, if that would be a good place to start. I don't know if it would capture the, well, no, it does. I was gonna say the court system, but I do think that's listed as ACEs as well. Thoughts?
I've done a little bit with ACEs when I was still teaching, and it does cover a lot of areas that people have talked about. It might be a good basic tool for us to take a look at and even use for future issues that come up and that they bring to the steering committee too. I don't know.
Do you think there will be time at that meeting on the 28th to go over this second goal as a group with that group and see what they think about it? Or do we want to define the goal before we give it to them?
I think both, Emily. Maybe we give them a draft of what we're thinking and then have them react to it.
Yeah, I just think, I'm no longer in the field. And so while I'm still very connected to the work, I'm not boots on the ground. I can't probably easily define the work as well as somebody that's doing it. So that's kind of my current struggle. So maybe just offering this up to the team and seeing kind of where they stand with this third goal. And I think we kind of did that at the last in-person meeting, but it was like towards the very end of the meeting. And I think that conversation was surrounding like that system verbiage, not the goal itself.
We don't have any of those leaders on this call. Aaron serves on that committee. I probably should look again to make sure there's not somebody else. There's other of you that, well, Krista was on the last call too. We can weave that into the agenda and I can share that back with that leadership team. Whenever you're ready, you think you're ready to introduce that. And I don't know, Aaron, are you comfortable sharing? Maybe being the person that introduces it to the YAC group and just to get some feedback from them about where we're at in this process?
Sure.
I don't know if I'm coming through. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess a couple things. One, in reference to Denise's thoughts about the ACEs, I think we could look at the items that it asked about, and those could be the things that we measure in terms of whether there's success or whatever, you know, those could be identified. Some of those could definitely be identified as measuring success for the interventions that we're doing. But like as a pre-post tool, you couldn't do that because it doesn't change. But you can see if there's additional events that these people, that individuals experience that are like identified as adverse events on the ACEs scale. So it definitely could be helpful in identifying those items. The other thing is like with the wording that Aaron first used, I think it did get confusing in terms of goal 1 and goal 2 then and differentiating them. I agree with the discussion totally too. I'm wondering if creating it just feels like we're doing a lot of talking and we're doing a lot of like, let's have somebody else check it out and see what we want to do. I think just coming up with some decisions and saying we need to have measurable goals. We need to recognize and not get caught in the verbiage. One of my concerns with goal 1 is still like increasing people accessing it is different than increasing access to, and then we measure by the number of people who access it. And there's so many confounds in real world measurements that it makes it tough, but I think we can continue to talk about it a very long time and really never accomplish anything. That's just my thoughts. In terms of throwing it out for the other folks, I think we have to get comfortable with what we want and then see what their thoughts are.
So what I'm hearing in the last few comments is we need feedback from that group. We need to talk to the work group. They're the ones doing the work. What are we missing and what we're trying to capture here? So I don't know what their agenda looks like for that meeting on the 28th. I typically sit in on those, but I think we need to see if we can get some time on their agenda.
Michelle or Denise or Matt, can we pull up the 5 areas of concerns that YAC group had, just to show where that YAC group is focusing? Because this is completely different. There were 5 things that we were going to do. So one of them was parent education involvement. Number 2 was mental health. Number 3 was workforce. Number 4 was accessibility. And number 5 was technology. So we're on a completely different page than what you're on.
I think, weren't they going to just decide on one of those goals out of the 5 to be a focus area?
Well,
And then,
we prioritize them.
yeah,
And they're kind of in the priority, but remember we did that towards the end of the meeting when a lot of people had left.
Right,
so that we're in the process of reprioritizing those goals.
right.
Um, and, you know, so that was where their focus was, just for your information. So you can see how that may not align with necessarily the goals of where the steering committee is at. So I would say we're not, you know,
You know,
We're not on
Dr.
the same
Schaefer,
page.
we might be closer than we think, because I'm just trying to process through. I hear what Chris is saying. If we were to make a few more decisions today and then present that to the group to give them more structure to say yes or no to. And then I'm thinking, again, just for the sake of an example, if we decrease the number of adverse childhood experiences that are preventable as one of those SMART goals of that collaborative piece, and they start looking at that through the lens of their first priority, which is parent education, the parent education then becomes a little bit more about how do parents prevent those types of activities that we're talking about, which is behavioral, right?
and I think that's what we were really talking about at that last YAC meeting, was actually trying to prevent families from getting into these adverse childhood experiences. So yeah, I think we're closer, but I wanted the steering committee to kind of see where the YAC group is at. And again, I think it comes down as we've got to also help the YAC group begin to see what data we need to collect. And maybe this goes back to our AIM workforce too, to begin to figure out how we can measure what we're doing.
So that should be easy to summarize, right, Travis? I think we're getting there. Yeah, I'm just trying to process what everybody's saying and just trying to put what are the
Yeah, I think
decisions we're able to make? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we are close. I think the groups just need to collaborate a little bit on what we want to get to the finish line for. What I appreciate the work that they've gone through and how they've prioritized the things that they're working on, but the things that they're going to work on will affect the goals that we are trying to produce. But we should probably make sure that we're lining up a little bit more closely with some of our terminology and some of what our goals are based off of what they're working on. So I do think as we kind of evolve this a little bit further, that maybe that's why we're having such a difficult time trying to come up with this, is because we're not engaging them, or we should have engaged them earlier on in the process. That's probably my fault, team.
Well, I kind of think this is all new, Travis. Nobody needs to be blamed for anything. We're figuring this out on the fly.
Yeah, that's
how
for
to
sure.
coordinate it. And I really do like what Aaron put in there about, things we can measure, what she put in the chat there, probation, that's hard data that we have or that we can get. And that drives some of the other things that we want our committees to do. So I think that's may not be end user data, but it's getting close to figuring out what our problems are. We've got to have that to be able to look at to see if we're really helping people. So yeah, I think we're coming, but it's a little, as Denise would tell you, it's a process, and we're going through that process right now. But yeah, I think that's I like the comments about, you know, what we should take back to them. I'm just not quite sure.
So am I hearing that we would take goal 1 and goal 3 to them? And then for goal 2 that we've been working on, we might take not exactly, but similar to the language that you had in your agenda packet, to say here is one more goal we're working on. We're still trying to define the systems piece. We have some ideas that we want to begin to define what we don't want to happen for reentering, and maybe ask them, brainstorm some ideas with us of what those things are that you don't want kids to re-enter into, and come back to you guys with that list.
I think we also need to add in the verbiage that Erin has been talking about, just to add that as context of like where our thought processes are and kind of where we've taken this idea, because we don't want them to reinvent the wheel and discuss things we've already discussed. So I think we probably need to give them like the notes from our meeting and kind of our discussion topics too.
Well said, Emily. Yes, you guys are really liking Erin's language. So what, do we have agreement that we should just use Erin's language for that goal? Whatever the heck it is it goal 2? I think I get and turn around, but the
Yeah,
one that we're
it's-
struggling with.
It's
I
our
think,
third
yeah.
goal, that's goal 2.
Yeah, goal 2. I think we just need to kind of further define how we're going to measure it. But I think there is a way to like braid all of that together. So kudos, Erin, for helping turn the corner. We were on the struggle bus, but it's early, folks. It's early.
I think you should all give yourselves a pat on the back. This was tough work and you did a really good job this morning. Well done.
Okay, so do we have what we need to be able to go to the work group? To the staff whose heads are spinning around with all of our discussions, do you feel that you have what you need to kind of capture what we've talked about and have that documented for us? You guys are the unsung heroes. Well, not unsung. We're going to sing your praises. Thank you so much.
We're gonna copy and paste this last piece that Erin just put up there and then just ask them if we're in the right direction for that goal, as well as all 3 goals.
Great.
Does that sound correct?
Michelle, if you get a chance, we throw our agenda back up and see what else we need to touch on today. I think we wanted to maybe check in and see any updates from when we talked meeting cadence. We kind of already got an update from the collaborative work group because we took a look at those prioritized lists there. I guess, Kathy, do you have an update from a board perspective?
Michelle, it's the last document in this packet is what I think Kathy wants to talk about. And Kathy, it's the charter piece. I don't think I gave you a heads up that it was on the agenda. The piece that you've been asking for their consideration.
Hey, Kathy, you're muted.
Sorry, we just need to get the steering committee's description, definition, whatever you call it, into the charter. So we have to have that and we have to approve that at a board meeting. So I just want to make sure it's right before we bring it for the board. And so is that wording? Oh, stop, back up. The new Buffalo County Wellbeing Collaborative, that section. And then underneath that, it says Buffalo County Wellbeing Collaborative Steering Committee, members of the board, coalition leaders, program of the operations staff invited to meet to lead the work of the collaboration. We need this part condensed into a few sentences, a description of what the steering committee is. Has that been done anywhere?
And this, Travis, was the language we put together when we first started meeting. What is it that we want to do? on those strategic directions. So I don't think it'll take much just to firm that up. But the board is putting together a new committee charter, so they just want to make sure we have the right language for the steering committee. So I don't know if there's a couple volunteers that would be willing to bounce some drafts back and forth with us. And we can get that firmed up and get that back to the board.
Yeah, I can be a part of that. I mean, when you have something that you want to send out, you can send it to me and whoever else is interested, and
Well,
I can read through it and provide some feedback.
well, the steering committee, the leaders of the steering committee or whoever need to make a paragraph that says, this is what the steering committee is. And so I don't want, yeah, I don't know how to do that, whether the four of you or whoever want to do that and make the statements, or whether you want somebody to do it and run it by you.
You know, we had documents a while ago, we talked about the roles of kind of leadership within the steering committee. I think we can probably pull some of that kind of stuff from there. Yeah, I don't think it'll take long. I mean, if Denise, if you want to work with some of your team just to pull together some of the, I mean, we already have all of this stuff in different places. So however you want to make that concise and pull it together, and then if you want some of us to review it, provide feedback, we can actually do that.
Okay, Denise, and somebody on the team do that, on the staff? Or do you want me to?
Yes, I sure can, Kathy. That should not be a problem. And thank you, Travis.
Okay.
That was a great idea. We can pull that language from what are the roles of the steering committee leadership, because we have thought that out as well.
Okay, thank you. We just need to get that in the bylaws. Thanks.
Okay, so we're good there. I think, well, that's it. We've got our next meeting on the 28th with the work group there. And so we'll see if we can just get a little bit of time on the agenda, and we can have one or two people maybe from this group with the help of the staff just kind of outline what we were talking about. Hopefully it won't take too long. I don't want to monopolize their meeting, but if we can get 10 or 15 minutes to kind of present what we've been talking about the last couple of months and get some feedback, I think that would be really helpful for us. I know that we've not used all of our time, but it looks like you guys are going to get some time back today. But before we do that, is there anything else that you guys want to cover, or any other feedback for the group?
I just wanted to throw out, Travis, in the agenda packet, we had the 13th of October. But on my calendar, I have the 20th being the third Thursday. So I just wanted to clarify which day we were looking at.
If we have we been holding true to the third Thursday? If that's the case, then let's do the 20th and we'll make it the third Thursday just to stay consistent. Thank you, Matt. Okay, well, thanks again, everyone. We've done a lot of work and had a lot of really good discussion over the last couple of months. So I appreciate the engagement by this small but mighty team. So thanks, everyone. You guys have a good day.
Thanks.
Matt, do you need anything?
I'll probably just run the minutes by you. For my next